Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patti LuPone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. And the industry includes the West End. Our guest today is Simon Bailey, who comes to us from London. He is one badass looking dude, but don't judge a book by its cover. We actually get into this a little bit because if you were to pass him on the street, I'd actually think it was like this cool biker kind of dude, but he's just like us. He's a theater nerd. And he's not afraid to admit it, though. I actually really, really like it. So, super cool guy, always loved to sing. He found his way into performing in a way that led him down a path that was very unusual. And, of course, we get into that. But before we do, find me on Instagram and Twitter. Leave a rating and a review wherever you are listening. I love to read the ratings. They are wonderful. And now we're going to take a quick break and then come back for this wonderful interview with Simon Bailey.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest is coming to us from London, where his career on the West End is booming. Recent West End credits include Heathers, which we're going to get into. I love it. Jersey Boys, the X Factor musical Romeo and Juliet, the musical Joseph, We Will Rock You, Les Mis, Phantom, and about a half a page more. He can be seen now in the West End production of Moulin Rouge as the sinister Duke at the Piccadilly Theatre. Simon Bailey, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Well, that's quite the introduction. Thank you very much. But there's a lot to live up to here.
Well, I'm just reading what you've done. You've already lived it.
I know. Do you know, it's I was thinking this recent time that we've had, obviously, we've had time to reflect quite a lot, I think, on various things. You know, life has taken a bit of a strange twist for everybody. And I think partly one of the beautiful parts about the job that we do, acting, is you're always so focused on either what you're doing or what you're trying to do or what your dreams further down the line might be, that you often don't stop to think about what you've done. You know, you just it's just something that you shelve and you move on from. And, I had just a little moment to think about stuff. And it's been, I've been very lucky, and, obviously people work hard at things, but been very lucky in the shows that I've done, because, these are shows that growing up, I listened to, I loved, I wanted to be in. I was just like, if I could just do one of those, that would just be kind of everything. So, to have done a couple of them is amazing. So it's nice to hear that list read back. It feels good.
Well, that was only part of it too. I mean, the resume goes on, and it's interesting to me that, like, as an American, living in New York and being so immersed in the Broadway world, that I this is complete naivete from my side of the pond here. And I think, I know everybody in the business, or I've heard of them, or I've met them, or whatever the case is, because I live in New York. But there is a whole ecosystem. I mean, in every city, like big or small or whatever, there's this giant ecosystem of actors. And the West End is no exception. And I think Sydney is probably very similar too. And then you've got Seoul, South Korea. It's got a huge theater industry out there. And of course, when you get into languages, it's sort of segments. But I love interviews like this where I get to meet somebody that I have never had the privilege of meeting before and talking to, who has, I mean, you're not just new on the scene. Like, we read the credits and part of it, and you've been doing this stuff for decades, right? And you've had interactions with so many of my friends. Like, I saw some posts with you and Ramin, and Ramin's a friend of mine, Ramin Karimloo.
That's right.
And I love peeling back the world, especially here in the U.S., to expose what's going on in a good way in the West End, and the culture out there, and the people, and this new what am I looking for? A band of people to follow, essentially.
Yeah, of course.
Because for me, I quite enjoy picking apart the differences in culture and how the UK approaches theater versus America. And correct me if I'm wrong. And I've been talking for a while, so I'm about to shut up. I promise.
No.
In that the theater actors in the U.S. are kind of in a negative way. They're sort of idolized as celebrities and put on pedestals because I'm looking at like social media numbers, right? Just plain social media numbers of following these people, and it's just, oh my God, a stage door. You've got Broadway actors that can't get a Starbucks, but I've heard people in the UK, my friends out in London, are like, you know what? Like, this is part of our culture. This is our way of life. This is a job just like any other. So, I mean, for the difference from you being in it and being an experienced West End actor, and of course interacting with Broadway, how is it from your perspective?
That's such a really good question, and I'm going to try and do my utmost to answer it. I think, as you'd mentioned, I mean, I started doing this 20 years ago, odd enough, at the Piccadilly Theatre, where obviously social media wasn't even a thing in any way, shape, or form. And the basis of the West End, whatever that's supposed to mean or does mean or whatever, it was, you had a group of working actors you all knew who everybody was, and that's still very, very true now. It's a very small, I like that word you used, ecosystem. We have our own pool, and most people sort of tend to know each other. And that's the world that we know. With the introduction of social media, things obviously you kind of took this little fork in the road. And I don't know the tricks and the skills of social media. I mean, as as your listeners will not realize, we had an awful time trying to get on this call because I'm terrible with technology. But there's definitely a definite distinction now. Like you say, between the numbers that kind of pop up and the ones who are kind of broken off and go on to have these huge numbers and everyone knows who they are and things. But there's still this group who are still, clocking away and doing their thing, and you wouldn't know them from the next man on the street. So I do think there's definitely a big change. Now, I haven't necessarily, I haven't done any theatrical work in the States, so I couldn't really tell you from my point of view what those distinctions are from Broadway to the West End. But I obviously have lots of friends of mine who have worked in the States, and you do see that there is they're very different approach to actors on both sides of the Atlantic there. So it's a strange one, really, I think.
Well, do the opportunities present themselves a lot? I mean, because you're talking about the ecosystems. There's a lot of shows that originate on Broadway and then will open in the West End. Moulin Rouge, case in point.
Exactly.
And then there's things that do out of towns. You call it an out of town, or they'll start in the West End and then they'll come to Broadway, and they'll. I haven't decided yet if I agree or disagree with this practice, but completely recasting a show when it's moving. I don't know if I agree or disagree with that, because then you're leaving behind the people who created it, who put their heart and soul into making it, to sell tickets with known names in your local region. Which obviously you have to do. You have to be able to sell tickets to keep going. But where's that middle ground?
God, again, that's such a good point. I mean, because like you say, it's the heart and soul. The genesis of a production is in that original cast. And I think you're right. It's where do you find this distinction? How can you possibly quantify it? Because like you said before, so for example, I haven't necessarily been on your radar, for example, but I've been here doing my thing. So if I was to come over and do, let's just say, for example, this version of Moulin Rouge was the first, we could come over and it's tricky for producers, I think, because you want to have it almost to make it feel like it's homegrown, whatever that means. So you want to have people from that region doing it as that, but also you want to keep the beating heart of what it is. So I think it's tricky, because how do you take a full cast over, I mean, in that respect, how do you take it from Broadway to West End to Sydney? How that in itself is quite difficult, because you're talking like years, years of time to keep that one same cast. And I do understand what you're saying. And I'm not entirely sure what's right or wrong in that situation, because I haven't really thought about it like that. You just think, this great show's coming over. What can I play in it?
Well,
that's basically what the actors.
Take Heathers, for example, right? Because that's something that in the U.S., like, people have been clamoring for a U.S. Broadway production of Heathers. So if that fell in your lap, right? Because behind everything, though, you are a person with a life in London, right? So you've got friends and family and whatever it is. So it's a personal choice to say, do I want to follow a show to the US, then to Sydney, then to tour, then, whatever. Like, that's something that that takes a lot of, I guess, commitment to uproot your life and to keep going, that I think a lot of people would not have. So maybe that's the middle point. You offer it to everybody, and then whoever refuses, you fill it in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that's a good point as well. I mean, of course, because people with families, that then it becomes, you either uproot everybody's life or just yours, and then have a difficulty. And I think that's a difficult middle ground. So I think maybe just one and all, just take and drop. I think that's basically that's how it's kind of gone, I suppose. And I do understand it, because how the situation with the families can be is always going to be very, very difficult, and not for everybody. I mean, some people might like it, some might not. So you're right. It's just, I guess, offer it out and see what happens, I suppose.
Well, if we offered you Heathers, would you come over to the States for that?
Oh, without question. Heathers, I love you bringing Heathers up, because Heathers really has a special place in my heart now, because I was part of its original workshop in London, which we did for a couple of weeks. It was mind-blowingly crazy. I love the team more than life itself. Andy Fickman is honestly one of the best people on this planet and makes me laugh. I don't remember anyone making me laugh quite on the regularity as Andy Fickman. And of course, and all the team, and Larry and Kevin as well. But we came over, and this was very clearly their baby. The love for that show that they all have is genuinely inspiring. So when we were originally cast in this original workshop, we knew we were part of something kind of special. And it wasn't until I realized how special, when we were gearing up, we were just supposed to do the one performance, just here's Heathers, guys, and it'll come whenever it comes. But we went out just for a little tea break just before we were going to be doing the show. We'd been rehearsing, and I was walking around to go and get some coffee from outside. There was a queue. I'm not even joking. I mean, going time and a half back around the theatre. And bear in mind, this theatre studio only holds about 100 people or something. I'm just going, you guys need a Palladium for this, because this is quite something. Of people dressed as the characters. There was so much cosplay then. I mean, and it wasn't, I knew the film. I wasn't that familiar with the musical. So I was like, how does everyone know about this? And of course, when I realized, I thought, well, obviously, because it's barking mad and beautiful. But there was such a desire for it. And that's why it holds a massive place, because I was supposed to go and do the first production as well. But at that time, I'd just been offered Jersey Boys. So I went off to go and to play Tommy. And then this is where that love, in a roundabout way, it's all coming back nicely, because the first production in London back after the pandemic, well, as far as whatever after the pandemic means, but the first show back was Heathers at the Haymarket, and they very kindly asked if I if I wanted to resume my duties, and of course I did. And the love for that show is remarkable.
Yeah, yeah. I've never seen a production of it. I've only listened to the music over and over and over again because I want to start traveling now that the pandemic is at least a little bit manageable. Definitely want to travel and get out to London to see it. But and I do promise we're going to get into Moulin Rouge, but I want to go back to National Youth Theatre of Great Britain because is as an American, okay, I'm going to show my naivete again. What is the age group that goes into this? Is it a high school or a university, a college?
If I remember correctly, I think the age groups, I think it's between 16 and 20. I think that's what it is. So basically, this all stemmed from school, right. School for me, not drama school. I took theatre studies as an A level, and part of that was a practical exam. So you had to perform a monologue and you had to perform a duologue. My duologue was from Streetcar Named Desire, the kind of very intense scene, which I'm not looking back. I'm not entirely sure how appropriate that was when I was 17 years old, but we'll gloss past that anyway. But I was doing that, and I ended up getting the highest mark that the school's ever gotten in that field for that one performance. And my teacher at the time, she was like, because I was not planning on striving for a career in performance at that point, and she just said to me, she went, "Look, I really think you should consider this, because there's obviously something there which needs to be kind of explored." Anyway, she gave me this form for the National Youth Theatre, and basically the National Youth Theatre was just a 3-week course in London with external directors coming in and out, and a group of actors, all basically just exploring. So we would make scenarios out of everyday life, if that makes sense. It was really a training ground for training, if that makes sense. So we would work with unexperienced. So unexperienced actors would work with professional directors and choreographers, and so to speak, before you took that step into drama school. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. And it was very brief, obviously. But this is how strange life works, because a buddy of mine that I met at the National Youth Theatre, we got on really, really well. He was from Liverpool. Well, he was from Liverpool. He wanted to move to London. He was like, "Look, let's halve the rent and move to London together," because I live just outside London. And this sounds like a kind of a condensed story, but it isn't. It's literally how it played out. We moved into a flat in London. He had a friend come to stay with us for a couple of weeks. This guy heard me singing in the shower. He was like, "Look, I think you got a really good, like, this is all absolutely true. This is how strange my life has been." He said, "I think you should speak to my old agent." So I spoke to him. He signed me, and then within a week, I had my first job. Whilst I was in that job, I was rehearsing. I was auditioning for Romeo and Juliet, the musical, and that's when I got my first West End job at 20, simply through a buddy listening to me singing in the shower, and that was it. I bypassed drama school and just did on-the-job learning.
Well, that explains the rumor I heard that every audition you give, you have to be standing in a shower behind a curtain with the water running. Yeah.
I started. This is where I was the genesis of that rumor. You see, I was the starting point. You know, there's some grimy shower curtain which has many stories to tell. You know, that's basically me.
Well, I just want to also drop, like, this is no small feat, because National Youth Theatre of Great Britain, a few names that they've pumped out, of course, Simon Bailey, you, Helen Mirren, Daniel Craig, Orlando Bloom, Ben Kingsley, Matt Smith, one of my favorite doctors, by the way.
Yeah, so, phenomenal.
God, Doctor Who. So listen, you are in good company, my friend. And the fact that it pushed you into where you are now. That's phenomenal. I love. I've got another podcast called Was It Chance? It's with a co-host, and we talk with people who basically embrace chance and use that and manifest their own positive outcome, right? And so you're sitting here in the shower, like, first of all, okay, I'm gonna back up a second, because physically, if I were to meet you on the street, right? You've got this buzz cut hair. I'm gonna describe you for the listeners. So you're wearing all black, chains, big rings with like kind of the skull and crossbones. With a bandana, skull around your wrist, like a giant silver skull around your wrist. So I would say like you're a badass kind of biker dude. That is my initial physical impression of you. Which, of course, first impressions don't judge a book by its cover, but everybody does. So I'm not going to be like, holy shit, this guy's a West End actor. This guy is in touch with his feelings? Huh? Right?
Say again?
What? So where does this need... I guess when you were doing the monologue, which then got you noticed, which got you into the youth theater, which got you into the shower, which got you the agent, which got you the job. Where did all of this come from? Because so Simon pre-theater, I guess, okay, I'll stop because I'm asking a lot of questions in one place and it's early for me. So I'm not formulating these very well. But who are you on the outside versus who are you on the inside? And I guess what made you want to embrace this chance of all of these opportunities just laying themselves out for you?
I think, I grew up, my parents were big, they liked taking me to shows. That was it. So from a very early age, I was always really into musical theatre. It was just something that was always playing in the house. And it was always something that, not always, because, but we, as a treat, my mum and dad would take myself and my sister to go and watch Western musicals. So it's always been, I suppose, and this was from early on. I mean, so I suppose it's always been kind of part of my DNA. It's not something that I kind of, when I got to 17 years old, I thought, I should listen to Empty Chairs, Empty Tables on a whim. You know what I mean? It was something that
oddly specific.
Yeah. I know, just to give some context. That was it. But there's a reason, I suppose, why that song popped into my head. But it was always something that I was into, and as I discovered singing at school because I was part of the school choirs and all that stuff, and then that took me into doing the school musicals. Because it was, I think my school was kind of, you had to be dragged kicking and screaming to do something in front of other people, because it's a very British thing, isn't it? We don't sort of do that. We like to kind of hang back a little bit. So I think, for kids to be in a musical in school is actually it's kind of daunting. But I was sort of wasn't given that much choice, because when I was in the choir, they thought I could sing quite well. So they were just like, you're gonna be doing this, so that was part of that, so to go from that into wanting to do it into, I suppose the sort of the outlook, my own personal outlook is I'm basically like a frustrated rock star. When I started to get, and then I'll say this till I'm blue in the face, I think from like 13 or 14, I started to really discover rock music as well. So that was kind of, and I wanted to sing like Freddie, and I wanted to be in Metallica, and I wanted to, play guitars like that and sing like that. And, so I've just sort of decided to meld the two together and just dress like it, or, like a frustrated rock star or failed pirate. And just kind of try to baffle everybody.
Fail as a pirate, like, I can't wear this eye patch. I'm sorry. I give back my pirate credentials.
Yeah. I either wear 2 eye patches or nothing. That was my thing, So that was kind of it, really. And I suppose, the external kind of stay, but I suppose being in We Will Rock You was fun to pretend to be a rock star and professionally. And it does help having Brian May sometimes playing the guitar. You're like, okay, this is kind of this is a bit of a rock star dream fulfilled.
Well, when I think rock
But,
star, I definitely think Les Mis and Phantom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Right.
you know, yeah, it's the shredding of the guitars. They love that in I Dream to Dream. Yeah.
Empty chairs, empty tables.
The can't be spoken. Lovely. Yeah, that's right.
So actually, Moulin Rouge then is a good. I think, especially the Duke, I think is great to merge all this together, because the Duke is the bad boy. The Duke is kind of like the badass rock star of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was funny because a very good friend of mine who I'm sure you know you will know, Ricky Rojas, obviously playing Santiago in the Broadway production. So when it was announced that it was coming over to London, Ricky literally sent me a text saying, "Dude, this part, it's got to be yours when it comes over." I was like, "Well, let's just wait and see." And then it turned out that it all happened that way. And you know, I love this. I love the character because you know the show itself is such an explosion of joy and a spectacle. A theatrical spectacle that unlike anything I've ever seen before. And it just has all of these great qualities. And I do like the fact that there is this one kind of fly in the ointment, you know, character, which is the Duke. And, you know, he kind of goes on a bit of a strange journey because on the surface of it, you know, he's this cool guy. He turns up, you know, it's attention's all on his name. He's wealthy. He's this. But then he has this switch, this button switch, and you're like, "Whoa, you're not right in the head." And I really like playing characters like that. I really like to I like darker characters. You know, I mean, playing you know other things as well is fun, but dark characters you can really. That's where I think that there's so much fun for actors because literally nothing is off limits because you can. When you're building a character and you're developing that character, you can just go into these reams of, well, what's the worst that this guy could do? You know, and then you start to track back. And I think that's quite a fun thing to play with actually, because that's where you really start to, you know, you suspend disbelief and you know, you kind of think, well, with all the things that are informed of what he's come from, which are all in the script, you think, well, what's the worst that he would do? The worst that he would do. And that's kind of fun. That's why you have amazing people like Alex Timbers going, Simon, I think that's a bit too far and you need some help. You know, that kind of thing. So,
I love Alex.
Because someone just let Simon lay down for a minute because he's going to some very strange places. But I do think that's the fun part, you know. I think that's quite a fun thing to do is to kind of just see how far you can take something and then work backwards. I think that's the best way.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. When a show like this it's so well established, it's obviously not going anywhere in Broadway. And going back to our earlier conversation, the cast is still here. So, you know, no need to relocate the cast to London. But when Alex Timbers, when he comes over and you're in the rehearsal room for the first time, is he like, does he say, okay, this is all your character, do not try to recreate what is there? Or is there a certain amount of like fitting a mold that you have to hit? Is there a balance between recreating what the public already knows versus creating, making your own character?
Great question. Again, I love Alex because Alex is like the actor's director, but he totally understands actors' processes, and I think he realizes that everyone is going to have their point of creation. So, in a roundabout way, answer your question, Alex was great in the respect that he was like, just put this on its feet. Like I don't care about blocking for now. Let's just play with it, see what you guys come up with, and then we'll start to have a look. So he really wanted it to come from us, which was really exciting. Because Moulin Rouge was so new on Broadway, many of us hadn't seen it. the film we'd seen, so we kind of knew roughly what the style was going to be. We knew what the approach was going to be, that it was going to be this bright, fizzing production. But we hadn't seen the stage show. So, which always, I think, really helps when you're when you go in blind, there's nothing clouding your judgment on how a character should be played or shouldn't be played. So, the majority of us just played, and we just kind of kept drilling everything and working everything. And Alex was wonderful in just letting us do that. And then, of course, once we were kind of establishing, we were kind of on the way to really establishing our characters. Then, you know, the how do I say this? The finessing, of course, all came from Alex, and the information is that, well, you know, this is great, but just remember this. And he was really great in letting us just go for it, and then just finessing us as we were kind of getting into the latter stages, which made us feel like we were creating our own show, which was lovely because, you know, we're obviously fully aware that there has, as we were talking about at the beginning, there is an original cast who put this together from page to stage, which of course we are very respectful of. At the same time, we feel that we were allowed to just kind of play with some, not boundaries, but, you know, just play with that whole thing and see what we could come up with ourselves, which I'm sure is probably, you know, similar, but there's a nice bit of individual difference and therefore ensemble difference, I suppose.
What was the timing behind it? Because we're recording now early 2022. Broadway shut down March 12th, 2020, reopened essentially in the fall of 2021. When did you find out about or I guess when did you get the offer, start rehearsals, and then open? Because I know West End opened before Broadway. So talk me through the timeline then, because I was surprised when you said that it was so new and most people hadn't seen it yet. I thought that there was more time between Broadway opening and beginning of West End rehearsals.
Well, the timeline for me, I think I came in relatively late into the process of the casting process anyway. But I certainly found out about it in June 2021. In fact, I found out, it was bizarre. I found out the Friday, I was due to start Headless rehearsals on the Monday, and I found out about Moulin Rouge on the Friday. So I was in this kind of giddy, I was like this giddy kid for the whole time, obviously sworn to secrecy, but like, it was that kind of enigmatic smile on my face. I was like the Mona Lisa for about 3 months, because everyone was like, why do you look so happy? I was like, I can't tell you, you know, all that kind of stuff. With like a pipe, you know. But so I don't know when the Moulin Rouge opened. When did Moulin Rouge open on Broadway?
Let's see. Let me Google.
Because I know they opened and closed because of the pandemic,
right?
Quite quickly, I think, didn't they? It was brutal. I remember thinking that
June 28th, 2019 was previews. Okay, so officially opening on July 25th, 2019.
Because they hadn't been open that long before. You know, they hadn't sort of got into their main stride, I suppose, before they were shut down for so long, which was just awful. I mean, the whole situation was just, you know, I remember just listening to these news reports saying this show's gone down, now this show's gone down. You just think, you know, because of course we didn't know the enormity of the situation, you know, until probably, you know, a month into it, when it just looked like everything was just in real trouble, you know, and just kind of watching helplessly as all these, as an industry, looked like it was being decimated before our very eyes.
Well, it
was essentially, it was, yeah. I mean, it was, and also again, like feeling completely powerless to do anything about it. You know, still very much now. I mean, we did a collection at the Piccadilly Theatre recently for theatre trusts and theatre charities, because whilst it's wonderful and I feel extremely grateful, as does everybody, that we're playing to full houses, we're also very, very aware of the fact that theatre is still very much on its knees. It's in a very precarious position right now. And the West End is one thing, but you're talking about regional theatres and theatres which will never open their doors again now, which is heartbreaking, because they've just been hit so hard by, everything that's happened over the past couple of years. So I think to be an actor now is very different than it was pre-2020. I really do think that. I think everyone thinks about it in a very different way. I think the respect for other actors, I think, is huge. I think the respect for what you do is huge. For the people who put it on and trust, and producers to put their money into it is huge. It's been a real eye-opener for so many reasons. And of course, we could talk about the negativity, but I also think, seeing the positives in this, as I kind of unfailingly like to do, you do realize that there is this kind of hard, this hard way about creatives or people in the entertainment industry in this never give in attitude. And I love that, and I think it seems even more so now that we've come out of something. We are still rebuilding, of course we are, but to all intents, to have come out of this and still fighting and still wanting to put on, in fact, not still, wanting to put on the best shows you could possibly imagine, so that the people who are paying their money for 2.5 hours, they don't have to think about their own problems for a bit. And I really love that. I remember with any situation, if bad situations happen in the world, situations that you didn't think would happen do happen, which we've faced a few of them over the past few years as well. I've always been of that mind of what we do is we're there to take your trouble away for the duration of our show. And if that's a sad show, then cry, have that catharsis. If it's an eye-popping spectacular, come out and fizz, like have the joy. That's the whole point of what we do. And whilst it helps us in our catharsis, because we get to travel and be other beings, which is what we like to do in this kind of oddly nomadic life, essentially what we do is we take people out of themselves for a bit. And I really like the fact that we can do that.
It's practicing empathy, because you can't, as a human being, you can't make your brain go through trauma without actually going through trauma or happiness, etc. But watching hearing a story, watching a show, watching a movie, that is as close as you can get without actually doing it. And it practices, you get to practice feeling, you get to practice experiencing without actually going through it. And that's why, as far back as time, written history has been recording, there's people who are dancing with drums and telling stories. And we are evolutionarily herd animals that are drawn to stories. We get chemical releases. I forget what it is. It's either serotonin or oxytocin. I forget which of the two. But our brain is releasing chemicals when we're hearing stories, because we have to remember, and we just love to hear this stuff and love to watch it.
Absolutely,
it's ingrained in being human.
It's the very being of, like you say, theatre, just talking about theatre solely, has been running for, like you say, since the beginning of goodness knows when. People want to be entertained, and that's it. And it's I have this wonderful. What I love so many things about this show, but the first 10 minutes of my show is basically walking across the stage, delivering my first bit, then sitting in a box, and I get to sit there for about 10 minutes while I watch an insane ensemble, a company of people dancing like their lives depend on it. And I get to watch that, and that's great. And they're all, this company is incredible. But the best part for me is, because I've seen those guys, is I get to watch the audience, and I get to watch their reactions. And it's honestly one of the best parts of my show, because that opening 10, 12 minutes of Moulin Rouge is, I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's very difficult to describe it, because it's just this beautiful assault of theatricality. I mean, it's just something which I've never seen before. And you see people's jaws genuinely at the appropriate limit, you know, like their jaws can't drop any further, you know, and you see like people touching the person next to them and looking across in this wide-eyed disbelief, you know, and then you hear this tiny, well, I always love when this happens in audiences, when you have this kind of moment of quietness before the roar of appreciation, because you feel it in that, did I just see that? Is that what? That can't be. And then you have this bit of quiet and this eruption of noise. And that's really what we get from this show. And it's so great to be able to look out and see everybody and just completely entranced in this thing, and reminding myself that not so long ago, we were all stuck at home and not able to do anything and not see each other or hug each other or certainly go and sit in a theater. You know, this was something that we thought, is this ever going to happen again? You know, as time wore on, like we were just saying, the industry was beaten to within an inch of its life.
Mm-hmm.
And there were honestly times I think everybody must have thought, is that gone? Is that now going to be a memory? Because I don't really see that much way, you know, a great way back. But the fact that it did make its way back, and that we are in that place again where we can do that to people, blows my mind. And it's and being able to watch it play out every single night, for me is every reward you could wish to have.
It's got to feel good from a personal standpoint to be able to literally see the joy and the love that you're creating in real time. And that's got to be what makes it different every night. You know, it's not the same show over and over again, because every show is different, because the audience is different every single night. And in that moment, you cannot recreate it the next night. It's always going to be a little bit different.
Absolutely. Because this is one of the questions most asked by my non-theatrical friends is, how do you do the same thing, you know, for that longer period of time? I'm like, it really isn't the same thing. Yes, the material is the same, but it's never the same. Like you say, the audience plays such a big part in what we do, you know, knowingly or unknowingly. They influence a production.
Swings, understudies, standbys, alternates.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, this is, I was going to come on to that a bit later on, but I'm glad you've mentioned swings, understudies. The work rate of the swings and understudies right now, you know, I started as an understudy myself, so I've had prior knowledge in knowing what it takes to have anyone of any character just ready, bang, drop of a hat. Someone's gone off at the interval. Okay, I'll pick up. Or, you know, but this is taking it to a whole new level, because of, you know, in and outs of people who, you know, have got the virus, or haven't got the virus, or, you know, this, that, and the other. It's literally, you're just picking out, you know, all of a sudden it's bang, you have to go on, or someone gets injured in a warm-up, bang, you don't have to go on. Oh, but I'm going on for him. And then you go on for him. It's, you know, to watch it play out is incredible. I mean, we had, you know, a situation over Christmas where we got hit by Corona, one hit, and we were down for 10 days, obviously, while everyone recovered, because there was too many of us that got it in one go to be able to carry on. And then we opened up and the whole cast was basically different. And then we got hit again. So the other half of the cast got it and we had to shut down again. But in that time, our company manager very, very kindly, because I was one of the ones who caught it. So I was at home and they sent us a live link of the show so we could watch it and support from afar and cheer everyone on. And I swear, I mean, you would never know that these people had never done it before. It was the first time, I think, well, because we were still in tech and in preview. So none of the actors had gone off sick or called in. So everybody was doing it for the first time.
Wow.
But the cast was 50% different. The performance cast was 50% different, and you would never have noticed. Hats off to everybody doing that right now, because it's one of any number of people at any point that you have to just go, okay, you got 2 minutes, get dressed, go.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. I mean, it's incredible to see that.
Well, that's it goes back to what you said a second ago, is that the industry is kind of beaten within an inch of its life and hanging on by a thread, and what's keeping that thread connected are the swings and the understudies. And
absolutely.
Because right now, look at what just happened a few days ago here on Broadway, where Patti LuPone is now out of company with COVID, and Jen Simard for the first time is going in as Patti's understudy, and the internet is going insane. And so but that has a trickle effect, because now someone's covering Jen's original role, and then someone has to cover that, and so all of these people. The benefits of this are incredible. You wouldn't be cast as a swing or an understudy if you were not just as good. That's the whole crux of the whole thing. Like, people are like, oh, it's an understudy. Oh, they're not going to be good. No, that's not true. No, everybody amazing, like yourself included, you just said, probably started as an understudy or a swing.
Yeah. And it's I honestly think it was where I learned, I was about to say everything then, but that sounds ridiculous because you don't learn everything. But, I learned so much from the people that I understudied, and really just watching these amazing people, being in an ensemble every evening and watching lead actors, or having to cover what they do, or, just the nature of what that brings, is such an important ground, I think, such an important ground for actors to go through, because you realize what it is to really work and wait and take your opportunities and work really hard, because you have to learn so many different characters. And I remember there was one week on, this was the most mind-blowing I've ever had, where it was a week on We Will Rock You, where I think it was in what it must have been a Christmas schedule. And I think we had something like 10 shows in the week, or it might even been more than that. I think it might have been 12. It was brutal. But I remember, I think it was something like, I started the week on the Monday as my Gaga track, my ensemble track. And then it went something like Galileo, Brittany, Galileo, Brittany. And every single day I was playing one of, if not both those characters for those shows. And then I think I finished, they gave me an easy one. The last one, I went back to, I was back in my original track. But it was, every single show was different. And then there was one I was thrown on at half in the interval. And then we had to switch. I think there was one day where I had to switch from being Brittany to Galileo or something like that in the interval, because it was just like, it was one of those things you think, if you wrote the book on that, it would be something that you would never believe. But you just do it. And it's, that's just part of us. And I think it's it's such a good learning ground, and I think everyone at some point should understudy a role, because it teaches you different things.
Well, it just occurred to me, I've been doing over 200 something of these episodes now, and it just occurred to me why there's a big benefit in being a swinger and understudy, is every role you get, every cast you're with, teaches you more about yourself, teaches you more about the craft, makes you a better performer. And think about the fact that when you're a swing, you're covering, I talked to somebody in Hadestown the other day that covers 8 tracks. So that's 8 different chances for that person to improve and to learn and to work, have different interaction on stage with different actors. And every single time you're getting better that much faster. It's like an exponential growth versus just going into one role at a time in a show.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because I hadn't thought about it that way either. It's like you say, it's interactivity, it's learning. You are learning on the job, and you have to learn fast. And if you get to do that in 8 different ways, you're learning 8 times faster, I suppose, or words to that effect. But that is the learning potential in terms of future work is invaluable, I think, when you get to that, because you have to learn things extremely quickly as well, and get proficient at them extremely quickly. And that's really what that's a big learning part of the major learning thing for me is, when I started to transition into playing roles, was to get everything up and running as quickly as you can, so that the rehearsal process isn't about learning your lines. The rehearsal process is about building your character and finding all the dimensions that you can find. It's not about, I haven't learned Act 2, Scene 1 yet. That's okay, we won't learn that until the third week. It's about, get that bit done, get the learning side done, so you can just start to hone that character and make it the best that it can be before you open the show yourself. So the speed of which you have to learn things definitely helps, I think, in the long run.
Wow, yeah. I hadn't thought about that either, because academically you say you have to develop good study habits, right? You always say develop good study habits, learn how to study. And in theater, you're right. It's just what you said. You have to learn to learn. You have to learn how to learn quickly. And you have to learn, especially as a dancer too, like, all right, 5, 6, 7, 8, here's the combination. I'm not going to show you again. Go out and do it. And that takes somebody who is trained to learn to be able to learn that.
Absolutely. Well, you have to exactly train your brain to learn the fastest way it can possibly learn. And that is something that takes a while to learn, but to learn that fast, to have the pace, and also to work out what your learning methods are. Some people like to shut themselves away in a room for a week and say, don't disturb me. Some people like to just whack it onto a tape and say, look, I'm going to give it an hour today and leave it to sink. And there is no right or wrong. There's just whatever works for you. And the more you have to do that, the more actually you kind of forcibly go, oh, okay, that's my way. That's what I'll do forevermore. And I think, again, that's where, learning by being an understudy really helps you, because you get to kind of work out what that way is for you, and learn that quickly, I suppose. So when you come to playing a role, or your next understudy, you know exactly the points that you need to hit. And I know I need to go and sit here for 2 minutes. I'm fine. I need to go and sit there for 2 hours and just bang, 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 read it 4 times. And then you'll be comfortable in your learning.
So you've been very gracious with your time. I want to wrap up here with 3 questions I ask everybody to end the episodes. The first one, just very simply, is what motivates you?
What motivates me? I suppose, is getting better. Is actually what we were just talking about. Is learning. Learning to approach things differently. Learning to just get better at the craft, and always kind of think ahead, I suppose, is just to do good work. And I'm motivated by other people doing the work that they do. I think it'd be quite easy to let things. It's very easy to let things slide over a period of time, but actually, having that kind of rallying charge within you to always wanting to be better makes you generate some kind of form of energy towards the work.
I love it. All right. What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
Don't listen to other people. I think if you're it's very easy to have outside influences, I think. And one thing, as I've gotten older, is always trust your gut. And if you want to do something, as long as you're not hurting other people, then just go and do it and find a way to get it done. I think that's just something that comes more so with age. But just not listen to outside influence and just trust yourself.
Oh, I like that. As long as you're not hurting other people, find a way to get it done. I like that. All right, last question. Super hard. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
God, man. This is very difficult. Okay. Fill time with noise. This is really hard because I have so many that mean a lot. I think for so many reasons, I think I would say This is such a hard question, Alan. Wow. This is, jumping to my head is Jersey Boys. And I don't really know why, but it's just, I think I had such a personal connection with that show. But then again, I want to say Les Mis, because Les Mis was kind of what really got, like everybody, what really got me into.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say Les Mis. Actually, I'm gonna say Les Mis because it was formative for me, and there's so many connections to it, old and new, that I think Les Mis is that timeless. It's timeless and it's eternal, isn't it? And it brings back great childhood memories for me. Also brings back great professional memories for me, and there's still some unfinished business in this show, which I would like to achieve in the future. So let's go with that for those reasons.
Oh, I love that. All right. Where can we find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram and I'm on Twitter at Simon Bailey 1210.
All right. You can get more of me at thetheaterpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast. Leave a rating and a review wherever you're listening now. This has been edited by Well-Rounded Hoodlum Productions. Music is from Jukebox The Ghost, and conversation is from Simon Bailey. Thank you, sir. This has been so much fun.
This has been great. Thank you so much for having me on. I'd love to talk to you.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.